here, so let me know if he says anything.
I'll tell you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Emeryville City Council special meeting. Councilmember Brinkman is excused this evening, but the rest of us are all present. Now is the time for public comments. And also, this is the white agenda, if anyone is wondering. Any comments from the public right now? No? Okay, we'll move on to the study session then. Diana?
Good evening, council members. So tonight we get to talk about transit study options. Visions for transit in Emeryville, West Berkeley, and West Oakland.
Go team.
We had a round of meetings in the fall where we asked people what trips they take and want to take, what problems they saw, what ideas they had. And then the consultant CDM Smith went off and with the technical advisory committee and defined some options, did some evaluation. And then we've had another round of meetings. We had the policy committee, workshops in 3 cities, the Emeryville Transportation Management Association, people who run the Emery-Go-Round, the Emeryville Planning Commission and Transportation Committee, and AC Transit. So today we'd like to talk about potential AC transit route changes and most importantly the potential connector routes, what mode they could be, what features are important, and local funding sources. So this is the a map of some changes that AC Transit staff is proposing to its is going to propose to its board for them to go after if they get some funding. And it extends several bus routes and puts a new one to the public market Amtrak part of Emeryville. So there's a new 13 that will go on Stanford to Rock Ridge and beyond, a new the 49 extending from West Berkeley, the 26 more directly down Mandela to the West Oakland BART station, restoring the 57 on 40th from San Pablo up Shell Mound, and a 12 downtown Berkeley to West Oakland by Adeline. The first thing we did was devise a trunk line option. Oh no. Okay. Which goes from North Berkeley. This is to provide mostly a north-south axis. There's one route that goes from North Berkeley BART into Hollis and Emeryville, and another one that goes from Jack London Square and West Oakland BART up to Shell Mound. The ridership projection did not support this option, so there was not further analysis done of it. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. The grid option, I have to be over here, that's what it is. So this is the most important part. This is the circulators option, and it has 4 routes, one from North Berkeley, probably the public will like North Berkeley better, to West Berkeley, and then over to Ashby BART, one from Ashby BART and down Shell Mound and over to MacArthur BART, and one from Ashby BART down Hollis and over to MacArthur BART, and then another one from MacArthur BART on 40th to Mandela to West Oakland BART and over to probably on 3rd to Jack London Square. And if the hospital shuttles want to join in, it could go to them. And the part that's left open in that square is the Broadway shuttle that Oakland is working on. During the workshops, the idea of an overlap came up so that people could go from West Berkeley or West Oakland into Emeryville and not have to stop at the border. So one from North Berkeley BART down through Shell Mound over to MacArthur, and one from Ashby BART down Hollis and to West Oakland BART and Jack London. We thought about modes, defining them. There's the shuttle bus that the Emery-Go-Round is starting to get away from now, the smaller, simpler bus with the fold-out lift. Doesn't last quite as long. The conventional bus like AC Transit uses and the newer Emery-Go-Round buses are. An enhanced bus is the same bus, but there are some street improvements like curb extensions for level boarding, speeds up boarding a lot, and signal priority, queue jump lanes, things like that, that can speed up the bus. And this has supported growth in Eugene and Cleveland. A streetcar, the cars are lower, so it's easier to do curb extensions for level boarding. They hold more people per car, and they go more slowly, actually, because they're bigger cars, but they have a smoother ride. And of course, the tracks are a 30-year investment. And this has supported growth in Portland and Seattle, along with other things. So comparing modes, if you just look at the capital costs, of course, of laying tracks, the streetcar looks a lot more expensive. We'll have an annualized cost later. It's still more expensive, but not as much more. Operation and maintenance cost kind of goes up at the same rate as capacity. And the orange and green shows new riders in orange and total riders in green. Did I mention your handout of the PowerPoint? I hope you're able to follow
Yeah,
along.
I'm looking at it.
Sorry. And then reduction of vehicle miles traveled is just related to new riders. Then we were asking people what features they think is most important. They wanted most of these. Vehicle frequency, time transfers, the agencies said this is a problem because if you're on the bus that has to wait, you're not that thrilled about it. Who has to wait? Vehicle speed, signal priority, curb extensions, safety and security, visibility, cameras, lighting, stop improvements, shelters, real-time arrival info, benches, trash bins, and cleanliness. People weren't that into Wi-Fi because it's a short-term ride. It's not a long ride. Local funding sources, even if there's state and federal funding, there still has to be local matching. So one possibility is for the PBID to expand or something, whatever it evolves into, to expand. There's also a Berkeley Gateway Association already that could expand. They've actually increased their route up to Amtrak recently. And maybe someone in Oakland would form an improvement district or an assessment district of some sort. There's the parcel taxes option. There's a new local gas tax option, developer fees, and fares. The Emeryville people said they would be willing to consider fares if they didn't have to deal with cash. So I'm not quite sure we're technically there yet, that no one would have to use cash. Our questionnaire responses, people talked about wait time should be about 10 minutes, fewer stops for faster travel. They liked the rapid or express bus. A lot of people would use the Emery-go-round routes, the Emeryville to West Oakland BART, and the public market to Rockridge, and the 57 on 40th. They want to connect to Emeryville, West Oakland, West Berkeley, downtown Berkeley, and San Francisco, keep and enhance the Emery-go-round, connect Watergate condos to the rest of Emeryville, increase speed, frequency, reliability, and safety, expand hours to nights and weekends, reduce pollution and fares, and provide shelters, comfortable vehicles, and a smoother ride. And I'm not sure this is the same PowerPoint because it's not what I wanted.
Yeah, I don't have that slide, I don't think.
No, I didn't want to spend 30 minutes on this, so I boiled it down.
Oh, I see.
So I'm going to go back to this one and tell you how I boiled it down. I'm sorry, got my versions mixed up.
There were a couple slides in between that you didn't cover, the ridership forecast
Most
method.
important slides. Okay, I'm sorry, audience.
Okay.
These are in the handouts, they're not in the projection. Okay, after the Transportation Committee made some comments about that they were disappointed that we weren't continuing to analyze the trunk option, and they weren't sure about the ridership projections. I thought I'd better present the ridership projections. So I got a slide from our consultants about that. So the way the ridership projections were done, the bus projection, the near-term projections, the buses were current boardings for AC Transit and Emery-go-round stops near the proposed routes, and that the route might replace a route if it's really the same route. And for streetcars, so that's people that would switch to this service. The streetcar.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm before you move on, you're saying that because people are currently riding the bus near there, you think they might ride this bus instead?
Right,
So that's not an enhancement, it's a replacement.
right.
How do they figure out, I mean, saying that a bus swapping out one service for another means that a person is going to use it just because it's in the same location. The thing I keep thinking about is one of the reasons that people ride the Emery Go-Round is that it's free. And AC Transit fares are definitely not free, and especially to go short distances, it's very expensive. My whole family went down to Jack London Square last weekend. It cost us almost $13. And people start making the calculations around this and think, well, I'll get in the car. And so I want to understand how they do ridership forecasts without taking into account, or do they take into account what the fares are, and are they anticipating that fares are going to increase over time? Because I think that affects whether or not people ride.
Well, and I think maybe you'll get to this as well. I don't mean to hijack your presentation, but I would hope that we might have more riders if the buses they were getting on went to more places than what is currently being offered. And the idea, I thought, of the connectors is that we're providing greater service to destinations where people want to go based on the questionnaires and surveys. And wouldn't we assume that that means a higher ridership than what is currently, we're not going to put in place the same service that we have now because we know it's not adequate. And so if we increase it, wouldn't we project additional riders?
Well, I do remember them saying that this is a conservative projection.
Okay.
Some things are easier to add in mathematically than others. Okay, and so for streetcars, they did consider a transit demand factor based on transit riders near the proposed route, and also they looked at annual ridership per revenue hour from comparable streetcar systems in the United States.
What does that mean? What's a revenue per ridership hour, or ridership per revenue hour?
So for every hour that the streetcar is running, how many people ride it? And they looked at several cities in the United States.
So this is just taking the population and assuming a percentage.
Not population.
Based on, it's not based on population.
No.
What is it based on then? I'm sorry. Is a percentage, the riders represent a certain percentage of the people in that area? Or when you say it's compared to?
They just compared it to the other systems, how many riders they got.
But it would be very different if it's downtown San Francisco versus Emeryville.
With a transit demand factor based on transit riders near the proposed route. And the transit riders that are currently existing is a combination of the land uses we have here and the tendency for people to ride transit here. So that's how the existing land use is factored in, is by looking at the current riders.
Okay. So it's hard to project something that significantly changes what we have. It's based on kind of current modes, current uses, current ridership.
So it could be that it'll be more than that.
It could be,
Yeah.
if it were promoted or enhanced. Okay.
So for the long term, they increase the near-term projections in proportion to the population and employment increases within the traffic analysis zones that are on the route. And traffic analysis zones are a few blocks. They're not huge. So I think that's a pretty good area to look at. And also, we're proposing increased frequency. So where that happened, that would increase the ridership too. So that's how the ridership was forecast. Okay. And so in your handout, you have this with the graphs. So this, on the left, is a graph of daily ridership. And the trunk line shows riderships of like 1 to 2,500 people for the streetcars.
Can you define one more time what the trunk line is? It's an up and down.
Those are longer
Corridor.
routes.
It's the north-south.
North-south.
And it doesn't connect to Ashby and MacArthur. It was like all the way, as I recall.
Right.
Okay.
Let's see. That's it.
From North Berkeley BART, but there were two overlapping lines.
There's two lines.
Okay.
One from, partly because we have Hollis and Shellmount. So there's one from North Berkeley down Hollis, and then there's one from West Oakland up Shellmount.
Can you tell me what happens to the Hollis route? Does it looks like it turns around and goes back?
Right.
Okay. And both of them do that? Okay. But
Yes.
they cross.
Okay, so looking at that, their ridership was not as big as the connectors. The connectors are the other option where they go from the BART stations and back. So, and then if you look at the cost, the blue is bus and the orange is streetcar. And you see that if you just, even though they're in different units, you can just sort of look proportionally that the ridership on the trunk line might make sense for buses, but won't make sense for streetcars. And the ridership on the connectors looks like it could make sense, especially on the Emeryville ones, just looking across at the size of the bars. So that's what their ridership and cost projections showed. Okay. So, and then continuing the presentation, we asked people about features, I already talked about that, and local funding sources. Oh, common comments from the meetings and the questionnaire. I went through all the different inputs and sort of figured out which ones several people said. And we don't have a slide of that. So one is to connect to downtown Berkeley and West Oakland. One is to phase in the modes from bus to streetcar. We did hear loud and clear to reconsider the north-south route from Jack London Square to North Berkeley near the bay. And I asked my consultants about this, and they said, we don't foresee that there's going to be enough ridership to support a streetcar that whole width by 2035, but you could serve it with buses. And if there's a part of it that doesn't have much ridership, the bus might be just less frequent there. So that was their answer to that. Integrate the Emery-go-round into the concept, connect Watergate to the rest of Emeryville. In terms of features, frequency, reliability, speed, safety, nights and weekends, and cleanliness. Reduce pollution to lower asthma rates. Explore the overlapping connectors concept so that you can go through Emeryville, not just to the edge of it. They liked extending the AC Transit 57 bus up Shell Mound. Explore the idea of a streetcar on San Pablo Avenue. And acknowledge that BART and Capitol Corridor have been thinking about a passenger service on the Amtrak right-of-way. So what this is in both the Capitol Corridor's 50-year vision plan and the upcoming BART 50-year vision plan, they are thinking that someday they might like to have a service that runs in the Amtrak right-of-way and stops at the Amtrak stations. I think that it might take a while for that to happen. It would involve laying more tracks, but there is room in the right-of-way to do it. So we should just be aware of that. And some other ideas that came up were Ashby traffic is horrible. We should use Stanford Avenue if we want to go to Ashby BART station. Another idea a planning commissioner came up with was to have a pair of routes that are like a cent sign with a north-south route and then one that just goes from like Ashby BART into Emeryville and back out to MacArthur BART. So it's another way of rearranging how we travel those same places. And then we heard at the AC Transit Board meeting that we should mesh with the West Oakland specific plan, which we have, but we didn't seem to convey that we had. Involve the true West Oakland community more and incorporate West Oakland, including 6th Street near BART. And as far as potential funding sources, at the Policy Advisory Committee meeting, there was discussion that maybe somebody would be able to form a West Oakland Transportation Management Association. There have been several improvement districts that have formed in the wake of the loss of redevelopment, so it might be a possibility. Somebody mentioned using paid parking to pay for it, public-private partnerships, and Measure B allocation. So, the reason they mentioned Measure B allocation in the plan for the sales tax, if the county finally does vote on a sales tax, includes a grant program that cities can apply to for capital costs, like buying a bus. It does not include any kind of guarantee for shuttles, and it doesn't include operations. So that's why people mentioned that.
Can I ask you a question about the West Oakland specific plan? Can you describe that? I'm not familiar with that plan.
Well, the West Oakland specific plan is about, it's an ambitious plan to develop business, more intensive industry, really, and a bunch of residential in various parts of West Oakland. It includes business development near the 3rd Street, along 3rd Street, and it includes streetcars that form a kind of an O on Mandela, 3rd, Broadway, and MacArthur. And they're hoping that we'll kind of fill in the north part of that, or can coordinate with what they're planning to do. They also have a walk that they want to have that connects the parks from West Oakland into downtown. And some people think it'd be nice to have a little shuttle that does that, so people can walk it or ride it. So next steps are, I'm going to the Berkeley Transportation Commission on Thursday, and then we'll be done with this round of meetings, and we get to take your comments and everyone else's comments and the survey comments and put them all together and come up with a draft, which we'll have out in September, and then go back to all our committees. I know we'll be going to the Oakland City Council because that's going to be along with the Broadway study report, and maybe we'll have some others too. And then we need to have a hearing in December at the Planning Commission and one in January here. We need to keep this project, the study, on schedule because that's what our FTA, Federal Transit Administration grant says.
Right.
Of course, when the council acts on it is totally up to them. Which reminds me, I wanted to mention that you have a letter on your dais that you got an email from Betsy Cooley, and she is concerned about two things. One of them is keeping the service from Watergate to Emeryville Shopping and other locations in Emeryville. And she's saying don't propose major changes until after the PBID election. I would imagine that the council might not actually act on any of this until they know what's going to happen with this. And the consultants also said that they might, in the report, some things might have two scenarios. What should you do if the PBID is renewed, and what should you do if it's not? So you can use that when you decide what to do after that. So I want to mention our discussion questions. Do AC Transit staff's potential routes changes make sense? Will the connectors help people get around? Is the overlapping connector option better? What recommendations do you have about routes? Which transit modes would receive the most support? What transit features are most important? And what local funding sources are worth considering? So that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Diana, when this report is finished, I would assume that there will be recommendations. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now tell me how the process works. These recommendations will go to the 3 city councils and the 3 planning commissions?
Well, we know they'll go to the Emeryville ones, and we know we'll go to the Oakland City Council. The plan is for them to go to all 3. I don't know if they will or not.
Well, my question is, because I think Betsy Cooley made some very good points about the harm to Emeryville. What if 2 of the cities go along with it and 1 of the cities doesn't accept the recommendations?
Well,
then what happens?
Then I would think that the cities that went along with it could implement their parts.
Say that again?
The cities that agreed with it could implement their parts of it.
Okay. I'd like to hear from the public on this.
Anyone from the public? Public comment? No?
Betsy, could you just come up and restate your letter so that the vast audience, TV audience, can hear you?
We can give you a copy if you need it.
We don't want to keep your letter secret.
We have your correspondence.
I mean, that's basically it. I mean,
To restate it, restate, briefly.
It started as a north-south trunk line, and that now it's sort of, there's not very much talk of the streetcar, and AC Transit has not indicated interest in the north-south route. That it's largely, only about a quarter of the maps now are what the original study area was, and that they really incorporate almost all of Berkeley and a large amount of Oakland. And there's an overlay of AC Transit routes over most of the Emeryville, over most of the Emery-go-round routes. And what they said at the study, at the workshop, was that first they said, oh, don't worry about the Emery-Ground. The Emery-Ground is going to stay just the way it's been. So, just don't concern yourself with that. And then,
Phew.
then I talked to, right, but
Easy
then
for
I,
them
then
to
I,
say.
And then I talked to somebody else I think it was one of the consultants, because it wasn't Charlie or Diana, it wasn't any of the people that I knew, who said that, oh no, that they wouldn't have both the Emery-Ground and the AC Transit, any place where they were overlaying routes, that the consultant would make a determination as to who would run the routes, and that it could be AC Transit, it could be the Emery-Ground, it could be any number of sources, because I said, look at the way these routes go. If you're only having one group running it, and it's sort of, so you have AC Transit, then people change to the Emery-Ground, and they said, oh no, it probably would be one operator running the whole thing. This is what I was told. Now, I don't know if this is what they're actually planning or not. Maybe the person who talked to me misunderstood it. But they said there would be one operator. They hadn't determined who the operator would be, and so that just sort of concerns me, because it really means that either AC Transit would, take over the Emery-Ground, and then it means that the Emery-Ground routes are really at the end of longer routes, which I think is not going to be very practical. Or there was also some talk about the Emery-Ground routes being expanded to cover some of these other routes that go from Berkeley and Oakland. And I don't think that's particularly practical either, particularly since it's paid by a group of, assessed properties within Emeryville. And something that occurred to me later was that I also don't even see how the consultant can actually go in and tell the Emery-Ground how they should be, who should be operating it, because it's an assessment district and they have an independent board of directors running it. And so if the Emery-Ground board of directors determine that they're going to run it a certain way and it's paid for by this assessed group, I don't see how a consultant can say, oh no, now we want to combine it with routes from AC Transit, or it just, to me, I just
Thanks, Betsy. You've hit several nails on the head.
Yeah, so that's basically.
Thank you,
That's
Betsy.
basically it. Oh, but the other thing was that, why not have all the maps say that Emery-Ground is going to, continue? Two of the maps say that just the Emery-Ground Express would continue, and the Watergate Express, and that's just 5 days a week during rush hours, and it doesn't cover any local stops, which I think is really important to the Emeryville businesses and the residents, to me anyway.
Yeah. Thank you, Betsy. Questions, comments from
I have a
council?
comment.
Go ahead, Ruth.
It seems to me, they look at projected ridership, and maybe that's the bottom line for a public transit agency. But if you were to look at more like qualitative research versus quantitative research, then there's really no nuance here about the nature of the rides, whether these are commuters, whether these are transit-dependent people, whether they're folks who've transitioned from driver status to non-driver status, whether we want to serve local trips for local shopping. 20% of our population lives out in Watergate, and some percentage of those folks might need to just have transportation options for them to go shopping or to go to medical appointments or whatever, and not have to use the paratransit options that are there. So there's no qualitative research here. How many people? I like that some of the maps show destinations being medical centers, like Pill Hill or Alta Bates, or, I mean, that would be, see, just like when the go-round extended to the Berkeley Bowl West, they knew that that was a rides generator, and certainly going to medical offices, it would generate rides. But there's really no qualitative nuance here about what we're trying to do and what we're trying to serve. Are we trying to serve commuters? Are we trying to serve people who work swing shifts? I know for transit-dependent people, who live in the urban core but might work out at the suburban business parks, it's been a real hardship, especially during the lean years, because they couldn't take public transit when they got off of their shift at midnight to come back to mostly Oakland. So I find that we really need to fill in a bit of the picture here. I do know that with this connectors concept, every time you have to make a switch, you lose ridership.
Right.
So I'm kind of dismayed that the longer trunk lines are just dismissed as being too low in potential ridership, because if you have to do one boarding and then you can get more where you want to go, you're more likely to take that. So every switch, every transfer, you lose people. So these, like that C route, I'm not sure who that's going to serve. Is that trying to hook up residential with a job center? You know, was there some kind of research done about how the people within that little C route live, you know, work at one of those destinations? So I just have a lot of questions about how this looks like a way for AC Transit to rethink how it delivers service. It doesn't look like it's anything else about the go-round, or as Betsy talked about, what it would mean to lay track and do streetcars. And you know, good for AC Transit. I think it's wanting to be more responsive to the public, but that's not necessarily the whole answer, especially on the peninsula for us. So those are my initial comments.
Jack,
ahead,
Ruth,
Nora.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's almost like AC Transit has captured this study, and the focus is on AC Transit and their routes, and not on what was proposed to be a vision for transit. And I'm very disappointed in what has happened so far. You know, when you talk about a vision, what we're looking at here is a 20th century vision. I can't say it's a 19th century vision, because the 19th century,
There were streetcars.
there were streetcars, and they worked, and they cost a nickel a piece, but that's a different story. But I think what this council was looking for was the 21st century vision, something that would pull together this whole west side, this corridor, you know, on either side of the I-80 and the railroad tracks. We don't have this here. We have a refined AC Transit study, essentially. 90% of this is focused on AC Transit.
Right.
And to summarily dismiss the streetcars because some consultant has said, well, our ridership projections don't say that it will not be successful. We should be going out to Seattle and to Portland and take it. I'm sure when they started their streetcar, some consultant said to them, "You're never going to have enough people riding these streetcars to make it pay off." What happened? They planted a seed, and the whole corridor bloomed. We're not looking in the right direction here, and I can't stress too strongly that we send a message back to these people who are working on this, that they're going in the wrong direction. The other thing that I wanted to say was, I think it's important for us to keep in mind that this is $250,000 from, who to come from, Charlie?
FTA, Caltrans.
Yeah, and we don't want to go back to the three councils and with something that's just a mishmash of AC Transit reroutes. That's not the purpose of this study, and that's what we've got so far.
Right.
That's, oh, and the other thing I want to, again, emphasize, that Betsy Cooley, who's been a big watchdog for us on the Emeryville round and in many different areas, she is spot on. This is a very, very dangerous to the continuation of the Emeryville round. That is not in the best interest of this city. So there are my comments.
Do you have comments, Jennifer?
I do have some comments. So good ideas all, but actually I have a few things that I want to echo and then some things that are a little bit different. I think we need to look carefully at scale and also at near-term, long-term, and I know that's mentioned in the study, but if we end up with better AC transit service as a result of this, that's a fabulous, quick, and wonderful near-term result. I think we need expanded service, period. So however we can get it, I think that's important, not for the long-term goal from AC Transit necessarily, but in the short term, because I don't see how you could just build a streetcar line in one section without considering a regional need. And so that's the scale issue. I think we need to look at the future vision and we need to look at the nuts and bolts. And that's where I think enhanced AC transit service would serve people immediately in a way that we couldn't get in a 10 and 20-year plan, and the capital expenses associated with that. To me, the long-term connecting of the region rather than the get around town cannot be solved by Emeryville. We are just too small to be able to figure out regionally how best to improve public transportation in this entire corridor. And that's where I would really hope that Oakland and Berkeley, at least the electeds, are a little bit more informed and involved as we have been. I don't know. I mean, I know they're larger cities, but still I would hope they would pay attention and give their input, because I would be very curious to make sure that their thoughts are also included if we ever hope to have that kind of connectivity in the future. But we do have larger entities beyond Emeryville, such as our County Transportation Commission, ACTC, the regional MTC, and BART. And those are looking at regional issues. And if why are they not helping us with this study and being involved? I feel like there's some folks who serve on the policy committee, perhaps, and the technical committee from all of those entities. Okay, so they're weighing in, they're hearing this need, but I feel like they need to be a partner in it as well. I'm just not getting that coming through loud and clear. I'm curious if all the committee folks on both the committees, did they read the Emory Go Round study that was done by Fair and Peers? Was that part of a packet that everybody got access to? Because I feel like that's talking very specifically about the nuts and bolts and our get around town issues and connectivity that should not be replicated but incorporated.
I know that the Fair and Peer study that's proposing a fourth route in order to provide more Emory Go Round service.
Well, it analyzes ridership at all the different locations and in and out. And
well, there were two phases of the same study. There was a ridership study that showed where the different boardings and lightings are, and then there was a study that there was a set of recommendations for how to serve the increased ridership that involved a fourth route, right?
Okay, I'm reading the March report is what I...
Anyway, I sent all those to the consultants.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't think that I sent them to the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee. And I think the one that recommended the routes was fairly recent. We might not have had a TAC meeting since then.
Okay. Well, I think I don't know, proposed service improvements is in there as well. It may be the same report, but I think it's critical. Again, I feel like these are two conversations that are completely relevant to each other, and I just don't see the information flowing as well as I would hope between those. So I want to address what Ruth and Nora both said about the connectivity within Emeryville. That's not served by a streetcar, right? A streetcar is a different scale to me. A streetcar does not get you to the store to go shopping. The streetcar takes you a longer distance. And as you saw from the costs, it's a huge investment, and it can be an iteration, a series, kind of an evolution of transportation. Increased AC transit routes right now would be a first step in the right direction. The mention of, BRT or something like that on San Pablo, I feel like that has been something that's been discussed, but I don't see that or information on that in this study as well. I don't know where that is. And that would be an AC Transit question, I suppose. So I think we're laying a foundation here, but I think it's very incremental, and we need to make sure that we are addressing our nuts and bolts within town needs. And that right now is Emery-Go-Round, and we can't ignore it. And it's really critical, all of the points that Betsy raised, that it's not assumed that this study should support enhanced and continued and sustained Emery-Go-Round as well. And I don't know how exactly to make that communicated, but I think that's really critical.
Jack, I'd like to respond to Jennifer. First, there is a bus rapid transit on San Pablo.
Well, there's the rapid bus.
It's called the rapid bus.
But it's not BRT. It's different than BRT.
Right, but it's been there and it's relatively successful.
Yeah, it
But
is.
my question is, you know, AC Transit has a lot of resources. What we're looking at is their internal ideas on how to better improve service. Why could they not have done that without using this particular study to do it? You know, we've been asking for better service from AC Transit for years and years
Well,
and years.
my understanding was that that was not a result of the study, but it was in parallel to the study. But I could be wrong about that.
Can I say why we included the AC Transit routes in this? When our consultants were looking at the context that they were going to be working in to devise an Emeryville-initiated set of routes, they wanted to know what was going to happen in the future. So they wanted to look at the AC Transit routes that might happen and use that as a baseline and see where the gaps would be and what we would propose. So maybe we should not have shown anyone these AC Transit routes and asked them what they thought of them, because it got everybody thinking the study's been taken over by AC Transit. All our consultants wanted to do was know what AC Transit might be doing so that we could have a context for knowing what we might to propose. AC Transit has not had any thought of doing what the circulators are. They don't operate that way. They have a grid approach.
Okay. Can I mention here that we have a meeting with AC Transit a week from Thursday, I believe, at 4 p.m. It's a public meeting. It's the AC Transit City of Emeryville Liaison Committee, and hasn't met since I was elected in 2009. But I think this is exactly the kind of thing that I would like to be able to discuss with AC Transit, because it seems like we're at their whim rather than having a chance to share what we think is important in terms of town. So I'm looking forward to that meeting and hope that the public will attend. It's next Thursday, June 26th at 4 p.m. I assume it's downstairs or up here. I don't know. Downstairs. Okay. You'll find it at City Hall. So I hope we'll discuss these potential AC Transit changes, because so far it feels like we just kind of hear about them. It'd be nice to have input.
I can echo what most of my colleagues say, but I just want to emphasize again that one of the reasons that I think the Emery-Go-Round is so popular is because people don't pay a fare to ride it. Knowing, or at least having that, knowing that we plan on having the Emery-Go-Round into the future, that's going to, I think, affect the ridership on AC Transit. And so any kind of predictions around ridership will need to account for the fact that they're competing with a service that does not charge a fare, right? And that I don't know, I would imagine that as their costs increase, that they would be passing, AC Transit would be passing those costs along to their riders. For me, what feels incomplete, right? I don't know if these routes are going to serve the community well, because I don't know at what pace AC Transit is going to continue to increase their rates, right? And right now I know that we're operating a free service within town, and that certainly takes ridership away from them. I can see what Jennifer's saying about the idea of scale, and then also what Nora and Ruth have said about planning for the future. For me, the vehicle miles traveled that the streetcar takes off of the road is very important. We have really high childhood asthma rates in Emeryville. And so while enhanced bus service is a short-term solution, I like the streetcars. Those are my comments. I think I'm not sure, Diana, if you feel like we've answered kind of the discussion questions. I see you kind of feverishly taking notes over there. Do you need further direction from us at this point, Charlie?
I think we hear you loud and clear.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I think we have sufficient direction.
Okay, thank you, Charlie.
Can I add that with the streetcars, I agree that we could become a 21st century city a region, if we had streetcars. So I want to elevate that conversation to an entity that is bigger than us. I don't think, us with West Oakland and West Berkeley are not going to get streetcars on our own. Yeah. We have to make that a consistent message that we're taking to other entities that have that capacity. And that's why I talk about the Alameda County Transportation Commission, MTC, and BART. In San Jose, the VTA is a county-run transit agency. I don't really feel that we want to add to the crowded stage of transit agencies, but I don't think Emery-Go-Round is going to be a streetcar entity,
right, no.
And the city of Emeryville is not going to build streetcars on our own. So how do we take it to another level so we could get that someday?
That was exactly the intent of why we went after this study.
So I hope that will come out.
Yeah.
And we're going down the wrong path here.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's looking too near term and not long term enough.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And we know we need some near term fixes.
So, just for history's sake, after Tom Bates was in the assembly, Dion Aaroner, his chief of staff, was in office. And at that point, there was discussion about streetcars on San Pablo as a way of bringing that back. And people decided, the decision was made to do the rapid bus on San Pablo because of the capital costs of laying track, and that also buses by their nature are a lot more flexible, can respond to changing demographics much faster than once you lay track in. But if you look at older communities where tracks have been laid in, I think there are more examples than not where property values have been increased, densities have increased, and all the rest of that. So this region already lost an opportunity around an arterial street where streetcars belong. They belong on arterials. So they lost that. Now there's wider, like little hums, whispers of maybe doing something along Mandela because the West Oakland plan wants to revitalize it. There's ideas around Sacramento Street in Berkeley because it has that wide median where track used to be before they landscaped it.
Right.
And it was part of the key route system. So at this point, when you look at streetcars, I think you need to look at streets that could accommodate that and with longer rides. And our Powell Street will never have a streetcar. It just doesn't make sense. But the streets, as an example that I just mentioned, could have track laid in them, and they could be reconfigured. So I agree with all these comments that we're not looking long term enough about the best way for encouraging the most riders over the longest period of time. And Diana, I want to thank you for the report. It was I had fun looking at maps and in my packet and envisioning things, and so it was a little more creative than is often the case in our packet. So that was fun. Just looking
I
at
want to
that.
make one more comment, which is John Sherman, who is an Emeryville resident who has really spurred this idea and was part of the reason, I think, for the study initially. When he spoke to me after I was elected about the streetcar idea, he talked, instead of the streetcar going on an arterial, which I agree makes a lot of sense, he talked about it enhancing a pedestrian bicycle away from cars mode of transportation, and looking at, Horton or a quieter street that could support, and certainly if ever we get a connector across our railroad tracks to the regional retail, there are other possibilities. Hollis can't have a streetcar. It's too narrow, I fear, and Shellmount, I don't know. So that's why the right-of-way for the railroad also is very intriguing to me, because it is a natural connector and it's not being used right now for daily, immediate transit needs. It's long-term, long-distance rather. So.
Just to let other people know, there is a bus rapid transit project that is slated to go along Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley down along to International Boulevard in Oakland.
But it's just International, it's not Telegraph.
Oh, did they knock that out?
They knocked out Telegraph, they knocked out the San Leandro part. It's just International.
Right. Okay. Well, but the point is that the infrastructure for this would look and feel a lot more like a streetcar line with like raised platforms more like I think what we see in Market Street in downtown San Francisco. So just the architecture of doing that is going to look a lot, it's kind of a hybrid really, without having to lay track.
And it saves a lot of capital costs for sure, but it will feel very different, and we don't, they've actually broken ground now in San Jose on a BRT line as well, but it has the infrastructure built in so that it's easy to get on and off. There's not a delay. It's very quick, but without the tracks. And we know in Portland, the tracks made a huge difference in terms of economic development.
Yeah.
So it's weighing all of those.
Yeah.
There's no easy answers here, it seems. But we
thank
just
you.
know it's important to continue, and I appreciate our staff's efforts in guiding and trying to influence the conversation.
I would just note that some of the streets that the Portland streetcar runs on are as narrow or probably narrower than Hollis Street.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
very good.
good to know.
Okay, we won't rule any of that out.
And those are shared, they don't have a transit-only line. It's shared
No,
with
they're
with
just in the
cars
driving lane.
along-
Shared with everybody.
Yeah.
Shared with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, and with that, that meeting is now adjourned.